everybody out there. So we wanted to talk to you guys today about your choice for a life on the road rig. I'm sure you've seen lots of options. If you're considering heading out on the road, there are a lot of choices you could make. So I sketched up this handy little graph because I was kind of brainstorming the different ideas. And we are somewhat biased, but we do believe that an SUV is the best choice for living on the road. So today we wanted to show you why we chose the SUV as the best choice. If you look at the graph I sketched up, it's based on this premise. One, if we look at the luxury you get, obviously the RV is going to be your most luxurious rig for on the road. And down the scale, all the way over here to, let's say, if you were just hiking or just walking, that's kind of your least luxurious form of travel. Okay, and then I compared that to a convenience factor. The most convenient to the least convenient. Where, again, if you think about it, again, luxury was pretty obvious, right? You start from walking, biking, motorcycling, or SUV scenario, maybe a pull behind, something in the middle, and all the way up to the RV as the most luxurious. You get the most out of it. And then if we look at the convenience factor, what you'll see is, let's rule out the hiking and biking because those are what we're going to think of as, less convenient. You have to worry about storms. If you're hiking, obviously you're bringing a tent. You have to tote stuff around on your back. Let's just rule that out. Also, because in our scenario, we're looking at being able to bring a stove to cook on. This is truly a lifestyle. It's not something we're just doing off and on. We also have dogs. So we know there's other forms out there. We want to at least give credit to the people that maybe are biking across country and things like that. But in our case, for those reasons, let's look at here and over, right? So let's just, look at this half of the graph, right? In terms of convenience factor. So we see the SUV as the most convenient out of them, and we're going to talk in this video about why that's the case. We'll go into more detail. But basically, the SUV is the most convenient, and the RV is the least convenient for everything from things like the money, the cost, where you can take it, maneuvering, and a lot of other factors that we'll talk about. So, yeah, let's go into detail now.
So one of your most important considerations is probably cost. And the SUV option, when deciding for rigs for on-the-road life, the SUV is certainly on the cheaper end of that scale. That's a big part of the reason why we chose to start off in an SUV, living on the road. And then eventually we decided that for other reasons, which I'll mention, it was the best choice. It is not only the cheapest option to buy up front, if you're purchasing a new one, let's say you don't have one and you're getting started, great consideration to start off with. But on top of it, if you already have some form of an SUV, it makes a whole lot of sense just to start off with that rather than buying something new. And that's what we did. We already had a Ford Escape, and we just decided that we would stick with that and convert it. If you've seen our other videos where we show how we converted the Ford Escape into more of a life on the road rig, you've seen that we did this for a really cheap cost. So we just built a bed in the back, and we used a lot of scrap materials and things we found for free or cheap. And by being thrifty, we were able to put it all together for $20, give or take, for the actual build inside of the SUV that we did. So it's cheaper up front, and it's cheaper if you already have one, and it's cheaper also if, something happens to it, let's say, worst case scenario, even to replace it, and it's cheaper to convert. And we consider the SUV to be the perfect amount of space. Of course, you could have more and more and more space and stuff, but using an SUV as a life on the road rig still allows us to have a full bed. We have pretty much a full cooking setup with our stove and everything else that we have. We have plenty of room. In our case, we bring dogs with us, so that's a kind of a count against some of the other forms that we talked about before anyway, such as, walking, biking, motorcycling. So in this case, for rigs that you can actually have that whole cooking setup, bed, dogs, all that, it's at the smaller end of the scale, but you still have room for all of those basic needs. And you don't have to trade things like the cost, what I just talked about. Why spend more when you already have your basic needs? And also some of the inconveniences that I'm about to mention. Of course, the trade-off with the other bigger rigs is that you get some of these luxuries. But when you get those luxuries, you also pay the inconvenience fee of having to deal with things such as, let's say, you have to find hookups, or you have to dump your water, your gray water and wastewater. If you want, to hook up to electricity and things like that, you have to find campgrounds that allow that. So the only way to gain those benefits that they offer is to take on the burden of these extra inconveniences. And we've chosen, in our case, to not deal with those inconveniences. It's way easier to just go off in the SUV wherever we need to go. Another really important factor about an SUV is this will offer you true stealth camping. Now, this mostly applies to when you are camping in, let's say, cities or sleeping in places where you want to remain inconspicuous. This is about the only rig that you can actually remain inconspicuous. It just looks like another car in a parking lot or parked somewhere. The other forms of living on the road are pretty obvious. Those campers stand out as, someone's sleeping in there, someone's camping. And you can't really be stealthy in those forms. Along that same line about inconveniences, the SUV also means there's less stuff to have to deal with, less issues, less things to break. If you're in some of the bigger rigs, you have to worry about all the parts. Some of you that are in these larger rigs know that there's a lot more that can break and go wrong, and the cost of these things to replace and fix is pretty high. When you just have an SUV with a bed in it, that's all you really have to worry about. The SUV option is also cheaper in terms of maintenance and repairs. Oil changes can be cheaper, anything breaking or going wrong, the mechanical side of it, it's all going to be cheaper. It's just, basic cost of a vehicle repair at that point, as opposed to a lot of the other things you have to worry about in these other rigs. And other things that will be cheaper with the SUV would include the insurance, as well as any other fees that you incur. So to add to it, what about parking and camping fees in a larger rig? So in this case, all across the board, the fees are cheaper in the SUV. And one more reason that the SUV is much lighter on the pockets is the fact that your gas mileage is better with the SUV. Imagine driving around, not only in some of these larger rigs, pulling something behind, climbing hills. The SUV totally all around is going to be better on that gas mileage and the cost. And speaking of hills, the SUV all around is going to be better for maneuvering. We do a lot of camping on public lands. We go on a lot of tight roads, and it's just a lot easier to turn around and go wherever in the SUV. We can imagine having a longer, larger vehicle or pulling something behind. A lot of people have even said to us about, options of pulling behind smaller items, little trailers, whatnot. But we just don't want to do that because we like the ease of getting wherever we need to go in our SUV. And along those same lines, imagine parking in cities in the larger rigs. The SUV, again, it's just a basic vehicle, so there's already spots there for it. So it's just easier to get around in an SUV. And finally, one of our biggest reasons why we've chosen SUV and why, again and again, we would choose the SUV for the perfect life on the road rig is the fact that you can take it anywhere. You get 4-wheel drive option, and again, back to that smaller vehicle factor, you can take it anywhere. I mean, this is your true boondocking vehicle. So if that's how you want to live on the road, if you want to do this on a budget, you want to do it cheap, you want to camp on public lands, you really need to strongly consider the SUV as a top option if you can, because that's the only one that's going to get you everywhere and anywhere. Yes, in some of the other options, the smaller options like the motorcycle that we ruled out, you can use that as well to get anywhere, but again, you're making the trade-off of you can't take your dogs and you can't have, a form of shelter, and you can't take all the whole cooking setup or have a full-size bed. So in terms of, again, the max amount of luxury that you can get per the best level of convenience, the SUV is our top choice for living on the road.